Welcome back to the channel, lads and ladies, and welcome to DTO and some numbers in the Sherman 105. At the time of this replay, that would have been a 2.7 battle rating medium tank in the American line, which I understand is coming to the French line along with a 3.0 battle rating. Which is entirely fair, as I feel this video may demonstrate, with the incredible M4 Sherman rolled homogeneous welded armor profile and the famous overlapping mantlet that it shares with its 75mm cousin. The Sherman 105 has, if not the best armor for a medium tank at its battle rating, at least among the best, paired with a cannon that, if you manage to get it on target, can deal with any armor you'll face in your battle rating range and beyond, as long as you're using the heat round. And you would expect a bit more spalling. We're talking about a 105mm high explosive shaped charge. Spalling be damned, we're talking about blowing through the side of that 15mm plate and annihilating everything inside the vehicle. But that is not the way heat works in the game of War Thunder. The explosive effect, somewhat less percussive than you would suspect, along with almost every form of explosive in the game of War Thunder having a much reduced performance than what would probably be a reflection of real life cause and effect. And yet, because of its incredible armor penetration qualities and its tendency to ignite ammunition racks, the heat round, even that found on the Sherman 105, can be very deadly, even if it can be a bit annoying about how War Thunder decides that damage actually works in the game. Something of a mouthful. But DTO, and I think that is an O and not a 0, so DTO 6913, already with a kill and a base cap. You can see as well he is using the view from the gunner's sight, which is a toggleable option, off by default for RB players and on as a requirement for sim players. DTO himself, a man who appears to have something of a penchant for roleplay, as he's kitted out his Sherman with some nice unit markings, and again, using an otherwise standard issue 105mm howitzer tank. In any event, while this may be something of a non-standard encounter, because of course by the time Americans wound their way into fighting German armored forces, we already had a staggering numbers advantage in terms of just about everything. Ask the Luftwaffe. But this is something more of a fair fight in the game of War Thunder. And if I sound like I'm sort of rambling and getting off the topic, that's normal. And also, it's late, I've had a long day, and it's even more enjoyable to relax with a classic because of those facts. The Sherman 105 was actually my first target in the game of War Thunder. I came from a game called World of Tanks, and from the first time that I played War Thunder, I realized I was done with World of Tanks. Just the playstyle was so engaging. Number one, the tanks just felt more like tanks, and that doesn't really have to make sense, because I was in love. And my first target as I started working my way down the relatively new American tank line. We didn't even have our tank destroyer tree at that point. The first thing I aimed for was the Sherman 105 because of the lovely experiences I had with this vehicle's version in World of Tanks, where the 105mm derp gun was a joy and a delight, even if it might not always be the most meta thing to equip on a vehicle. In the game of War Thunder, of course, the Sherman 105 used to be one of the deadliest vehicles in the game, as the heat round would cause massive internal damage, the way it honestly should, if you're reflecting, again, realistic expectations. But these 105mm and other kinds of heat rounds just ended up being so devastating that they destroyed the balance of the game, and there is a certain balance. Not an equal balance, but a fragile balance that is maintained in the game of War Thunder, and nerfing the heat rounds into oblivion, into perpetuity, has been an important part of maintaining that balance as we look at the absolutely unstunning post-penetration effect of that heat round into the engine compartment of the Su-76. He still wasn't feeling it, so he jumped out. A wise decision, and another nod to historical accuracy, as even stellinium-infused super troopers would admit that their endeavors on foot should be more productive than a casemate tank destroyer with its engine thoroughly busted. Give Yuri with a wrench and a hammer some time to work on the thing, and go win the fight on the ground, loyal Soviet troops. In any event, the 105 Sherman used to be a monster when its heat round was very effective. It used to be a monster when its high explosive round could penetrate much more armor than it does now, and the fact that it comes stock without a heat round is a serious problem, and a rare precedent in the game of War Thunder. Not a lot of times will you see any vehicle that starts with only a high explosive round, especially if it is so anemic in terms of what it commonly faces as the 105 Sherman. By no means unheard of, but rare. The fact that the Sherman 105 still has the aforementioned top tier armor protection in terms of frontal armor protection in the game, as well as its not terrible mobility, gives it an edge that it desperately needs throughout the stock grind. Even so, those are some beautiful angles, by the way, as DTO peeks around. I just love the look of a hold down, well, it's not entirely hold down, but it's pretty close, and the rear aspect slope that it's sitting on really accentuates the attractiveness of that sloped frontal plate. Big, flat, strong, sloped armor. You gotta love it. And there's just something about the cast transmission casing meeting up with that sloped frontal plate, paired with the stubby strength of the 105, just makes me feel like my own self. I don't know, maybe I identify. I've got something of a frontal protrusion on my upper frontal plate as well. And besides my glorious dad belly, I've got a pretty good schnoz sticking off this trunk as well. So the Sherman 105, close to my heart because it is so close to my own body proportions. A little bit awkward, but still standard issue. In any event, this is something of a downtime in the game, and yet I've enjoyed speaking with you so much that I just left it in. Don't worry your hearts. Things will pick up in no time, and it's clear that DTO is a man who is a fan of the hold down position. And we're getting into a point in the match where the majority of his team has been defeated, and this is indeed the decision point for DTO to GTFO the area and find another zone to hold down. It would make sense for the enemy team to start making his way, or making their way, to where DTO was set up in a defensive position, and it made sense for him to hold down that ground, but the fact that his team is not able to control the other 2/3 of the critical zones on the map means that DTO needs to mobilize, and indeed he does. Wow, I'm so long-winded today. Can you tell that yes, I am a fan of the European Canadian? I've been kind of meaning to talk about that. I try to make it a point to stand up for him when people bad talk his way of making videos, and you guys do understand that people have a right to make the content that they enjoy making. Because one style is not your favorite style, doesn't really mean that somebody has to go for that. It's clear that Tech has his audience. He is a long-winded man. He loves a drawn-out conversation, and that's one of the things that I find really charming about him as a person. I kind of feel special because I know his first name, but he doesn't really use that in his videos, so whatever. But he used to be called Boom. I think people go with Tech these days most of the time, short for the European Canadian, and that is the only the only short thing about the European Canadian. He will make long-winded videos, he will ramble on as you do, and he has a curated and considerate way of speaking, as well as just a slow, drawn-out way of getting the words out of his mouth, something like I'm doing right now. And I find it relaxing, and he just comes off to me as a sort of official seeming, he doesn't screw around with most of his videos, especially when he's giving information. He's not generally somebody that plays hot and loose with the facts, but at the same time he has sort of a warm and inviting demeanor. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, what's the deal? If you don't like the guy, just don't watch his videos. It's so weird to see people, and I think it's because he's a very large channel, and so he's a focus for people's attention. But it's just kind of weird that I will hear people complaining about him so much. I think, honestly, there might be a little bit of jealousy in there, and man, I can relate with that. It's human nature to want to find a problem with something that's really big and really successful in an area where you would like to be big and successful, even if it's not rational or realistic, because it's an emotional response. But anyway, I guess I'm just kind of tired of people bashing on someone that I consider a friend. You know what? It's a shame we don't spend more time together. I look back fondly on my days for a while where I hung out in the TEC Hub Discord, and I still recommend the site because I've always had good experiences there, and there's a handful of people that have been there from the beginning that I think are just fantastic folks. And if I start to name them, I know I'm going to miss a bunch of them. But, you know, Crumpo, Rocker Boy, and everybody else, love you guys. In any event, you know I'm missing people. But I think about you guys. I've decided to invest my time very carefully, especially when it comes to War Thunder, and the only reason I'm not more involved with TEC Hub, as I completely ignore the action once again, you guys can see what's going on, is because I've just decided to dedicate my Discord time to either quickly promoting my videos or paying attention to my own community, and that is just to keep things manageable, because time management has become so important for me since I have a family to take care of. And DTO was 7 kills in the Sherman 105, a beautiful tank put on gorgeous display here. You know what, there really is something to be said for the historical look coming from a man who paints up his tanks like French hookers and has them strut on the promenade. There's something to be said for that as well. I love the custom camouflages. But for the win, DTO holding down the A point for his team. Now, in a second replay, judging from how nimble the M3 is here, this is indeed an arcade replay, as evidenced by the penetration indicator. Another Su-76, another victim, this time to the dual action of the 37mm armor piercing turret and the 75. It's not quite a howitzer, is it? We'll just say that it is the Sponson cannon. Of course, this being the M3, and I think this one is actually the Grant, but if it's the Lee, we'll just take it for granted, shall we? In any event, I went on a little bit of a rant there, the last part of the video, but sometimes I just want to take some time and get my thoughts out there, which is something I have in common with the European Canadian. Taking down his doppelganger on the enemy team, DTO, now escaping historical accuracy a bit more than he already did in the realistic battle where America was fighting the Soviets. We have DTO in the Grant. You can see this is a match in progress. He picked up his 4th kill just now on his 2nd spawn. So he already got 3 kills. He's going to get several more in the Lee in arcade battles. This, a medium tank that is really odd in the game of War Thunder. Again, not unheard of. In fact, with several renditions of essentially the same vehicle in a small handful of tech trees, often as a premium, of course, for a cross tech tree option, the M3 is, as it always was, an odd duck, a strange mix of compromises that worked out fairly well historically, and in the game of War Thunder has every opportunity to do well at its battle rating. Once you get above its battle rating, it can face some challenges, but nothing that 75 can't handle if you can get it on target. And the 37 bonus Nachos gun, not bad at all at keeping the pressure on enemy tanks. It's difficult to overcome the fire rate of a tank that has 2 cannons. Something that should be delightful to see when Swedish ground forces fully come to the game, as they probably already have by the time this video comes out. In any event, definitely going from pestering to perturbation on this T28. Did I get the number right? It's been a while since I drove that land ship that's called a medium tank in the game. But even in arcade, the M3 Lee can slug it out with the best at its battle rating. DTO just about to prove that for us in no uncertain terms. And another thing that I get every now and then, although I would like to brag about my own little community, you guys that I know on the Toshio Thunder Discord, join us, link in the description below, but you guys seem to be very respectful to players that enjoy game modes other than Tank RB and Air RB, and that is something that I definitely appreciate. I love to see people enjoying the game for the diverse range of things that it has to offer, and I myself, every now and then, jump back into arcade, especially Tank Arcade, to have some fun. And you know what? It looks like DTO is having a blast, already up to 9 kills on his second spawn, and showing off the improved mobility that the M3 has to whirl around quickly, take down a foe who didn't know how much trouble he was going to be in. Engine taken down on the Stug, and there's really nothing he can do now. 2 cannons, too powerful, too quick, and too far behind him to respond to. DTO picking up his 10th kill. It's nice to just talk about what's happening at this point. In any event, the battle is progressing, and for an arcade match, this is pretty close to the end. One thing I've noticed about arcade is matches tend to be a little bit faster than RB in general, at least in terms of ground matches, and often in aircraft as well. Now, DTO getting a very important one-shot kill, as well as taking down the driver on the Panzer IV, and getting a sweet double kill. Enemy what's it? It's another one of those wannabe T-34s. Really tricky armor to go through. You do have a chance to go through the turret. There is a spot on the side armor where you can punch through sometimes. That's actually very tricky because the side armor on this thing is built like a tank. But with a dozen kills and 2 deaths, the match winding to a close, DTO caps off that match with a death. A hero of American arcade battles. I don't know where I was going with that one. But I enjoyed making this video today. And as always, I look forward to connecting with you guys on Discord. Again, that is sort of my social life, apart from the meat space relationships that I do my best to maintain. And so, check that Discord link in the description of this video, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.